In this video, we'll talk about job level settings, the operations and properties panel, coolant settings, reference positions, and the approach and retract. I have our part posted in a Sync Manager where we left off. I'm going to come over to the machine group, and I'm going to click on machine group, and I'm going to click on the down arrow. This is where we can set the header information, including the program number and other global settings. We can also see on the right hand side over here that the property panel woke up. The property panel contains all the information in the machine group and some additional information as well. As we work through the Sync Manager, keep an eye on the properties panel as we click on different items. So I can change information over here. I'll put a program number in it, and on over here I'll put my name. So as you can see, we can change this information in either side. And as we would expect, as soon as we change something in the Sync Manager, the state of the Sync Manager changes. So instead of a green icon now, I have a yellow icon now, which means that changes have happened. And as I pointed out before, if we hit Reset All Values, it would take this information that I just put in there and put it back to the default values that are in the consumer level. The Properties panel is an additional way to view information and work with the settings in the Sync Manager. For example, if I click on the generic Fanuc Lathe DS machine in Machine Explorer, I get information about the machine, in particular the development version. NC output settings, including the default folder location, can be changed here as well. As you can see, the information in the Properties panel will change based on the selection in Sync Manager, exposing settings when they're available. In the Operations panel on the left-hand side of the screen, as the name suggests, contains all the operations. This is where we will set our coolant options, reference returns, and approach and retracts, as well as other settings. If I right-click in the panel, I have some different options to expand and contract these operations. I can, of course, also open them and close them one at a time with the plus and minus symbol. You'll notice when expanded, we can see the key components of a toolpath organized in the order they will be executed. You'll also notice on the right-hand side of the Operations panel some icons, which give us a quick visual indication of that toolpath. If I hover over the individual icons, I can get some information. So I have a comment section. I have some information on the tool. I have some information on how the tool is comped. And then I have the left spindle indicator and the right spindle indicator. And you'll also notice as I click on these, the properties update depend upon what I click on. To change an individual coolant strategy, I'll come up to the top node in an operation and select the drop-down arrow. And we can see the coolant strategy exposed here with a drop-down of selections. This particular selection that we saw come up, we set as a default when we were in the consumer layer over here. You'll also notice that I can change them in the properties panel as well. So I'll change it here, and we can see it update, and I can also change it here as well. If I want to change more than one coolant operation at a time, I can select multiple operations in the operation panel. So I'll select this lathe face as my first. I'll hold the Shift key down, and I'll select Contour 2D as my last. And you'll notice the properties updated. The properties will display only the properties that are common to all the operations selected. So for example, if I select the Transform Rotate, I'll hold down the Control key and select Transform Rotate. Transform Rotate does not contain a coolant strategy, so the Properties panel will not show a coolant strategy. I'll deselect that, and all of these operations up here do share a coolant strategy, so I can come in here and change this here. We can set where the turret starts and ends the operation with reference positions. We can find the reference position for the start of the operation here, the top node of the operation. We do have some selections we can choose from. We can also select it over here in the Properties panel. We can override the tool number here if we choose to. And the approach strategy is the movement the machine uses to get to the approach position. It's typically where the machine rapids to. We can select our preference here, which axis we want to move first, or if we want them to move together. You'll notice with our motion down below, this window becomes active, and we can see the actual movements that the tool will make. Now, we don't have a reference return in this particular operation because the same tool is used in both operations. But if I jump down one more operation, I can see that I have a retract. And in the retract, I have a reference position. And this defines where the turret goes at the end of the operation. And I also have a retract strategy that defines how the turret gets to that reference position. In our next video, we'll create some custom reference positions.